Hello, welcome to Isasnora Snores by Carol L. Paur, published by Black Rose Writing. Here, we take snippets from the book and bring them to life. Last time, Sir Highbroth was spying on the family and discovered Isasnora's loud snoring. The next morning, he brought King Frederick to the young family's home, where the king banished them from the Kingdom Calelind. After the family said their goodbyes to their loved ones, they crossed the glass drawbridge and headed toward the Forest Petiole. Let us check in to see how Isasnora and her parents are doing. The family decided to spend their first night away from the Kingdom Calelind outside the Forest Petiole. There were stories of a terrible giant who roamed through the forest at night. They had no protection against this giant. Sir Caleb and Lady Morella were climbing in their beds when the ground trembled beneath them.
Hurry! We must run!
Why? We have earplugs, the giant doesn't.
When the giant Mongous stomped into sight, Isasnora's loud snoring reached his watermelon-sized ears. The giant fell into a fit of hysterical laughing and scratching, knocking down a mile of trees. Isasnora continued snoring. Her parents fell asleep despite the 8,000-pound laughing giant, who still made less noise than the snoring Isasnora. Mongous roared with laughter until dawn. Giants have glass eardrums, or so scientists say, and as the sun cracked through the eastern sky, Mongoos's eardrums cracked inside his ears. He could no longer hear anything, especially Isasnora's snoring symphony. Mongous sat up. For an 8,000-pound giant, this action produced hurricane-force winds, frightening the little family's horse into galloping away and scattering their belongings into unknown lands. The gust of wind created by Mongous also picked up the tiny crib with the slumbering Isasnora and spun it around 100 times before plopping it into an owl's nest. Sir Caleb and Lady Morella watched all this in horror. Giant Mongous saw it all too, and he reached for the baby to hand her back to her terrified parents. He grinned, and you could walk through the gaps between his teeth. The young parents looked the other way while pinching their delicate noses. Giants did not practice good dental hygiene. After depositing the baby to her parents, the giant turned and stomped back into the forest. That was the first meeting of Isasnora's family with Mongous, but certainly not the last. The giant befriended the family and built them a cottage with furniture, brought them food, and planted them a garden. Mongous became Isasnora's best friend, which caused the parents some concern. One reason for their worry was that Isasnora was learning giant talk.
Cool! Maga waga! Boo waga waga! Flamsha! Oink!
Isasnora picked up other giant habits as well, such as not wanting to brush her teeth, bathe, or comb her hair. Baths were a wrestling match between Lady Morella and Isasnora. With the child screaming so loudly, the forest animals shivered in fear. Lady Morella was especially concerned about her daughter's terrible habits. One day, she was pondering what to do about the situation, when there was a loud pounding on their door. Lady Morella opened it to see Mongous crying. When a giant cries, it's like a raging storm. Isasnora stood next to her mother, looking up at her crying friend. Mongoos's mother was sick, and he needed to go.
Mom, sick.
I go to help.
Isasnora ran outside, and Mongous picked her up. She began speaking to him in her strange language.
Wooby, wooby. Ranky poo. Oink, oink.
Even though he could hear nothing because his eardrums had been shattered years ago by the infant Isasnora's loud snoring, he understood his little friend. He hugged her goodbye and set her down.
Goodbye.
Mongous stomped away. For weeks, Isasnora cried, and her language grew even more bizarre. Isasnora's parents could no longer understand her.
Gimme, Mazook, Kantul, oink, oink.
Sir Caleb had an idea and brought it up at dinner one night.
Maybe we should teach her our trades. You can teach her how to paint, and I will teach her how to make clocks.
It sounded like a great idea, but in reality it was a terrible one. Isasnora could barely hold a paintbrush. It was worse with clockmaking. When Sir Caleb tried to teach Isasnora the ins and the outs of his trade, he yelled at her in frustration. One day he was especially harsh, and his shouts chased Isasnora outside. She climbed Slooslu, her favorite tree in the Forest Petiole. In the top of Slooslu, Isasnora could see for miles. On this day, she looked for Mongous, but he was nowhere to be found. Isasnora sighed and looked back inside Slooslu. What she saw made her heart stop. What did Isasnora see? How did it get up in her tree? Why was it there? What did it want? Isasnora thought of ways to get rid of it, but its piercing stare frightened her. Was she safe up in her tree with this fierce creature? Join us next week as we find out who has entered Isasnora's special hiding place. I'm Elizabeth Paur, your narrator. Your director and producer was Carol L. Paur. You may purchase the entire book of Isasnora Snores at Black Rose Writing, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. Thank you for listening. Cheers.